In September of 2022, an acclaimed investigative journalist based in Las Vegas, Nevada, was found stabbed to death outside of his home. Video footage obtained by investigators quickly began piecing together a timeline of events that told the story of a meticulously planned crime. But as the pieces fell into place, the truth behind the murder and the alleged killer only became more and more unbelievable. Las Vegas, Nevada, a mecca for gambling, drinking, partying, and generally disreputable behavior. Vegas earned the nickname Sin City for a reason, but this reputation is usually reserved for the tourist haven that is the main strip and its surrounding casinos, hotels, and bars. But off of the strip in suburban Las Vegas, the scene is much quieter. The home of 69-year-old Jeff Gehrman in northwest Las Vegas was near to multiple parks, a family fun center, several home stores, and popular family-friendly restaurants. On the evening of Friday, September 2nd, 2022, a neighbor of Jeff's was walking past the house and noticed that his garage door had been left wide open. The neighbor initially thought little of it. They wandered up the drive and closed the door. The last anyone had heard of Jeff was that he had returned to his home in the late morning of that same day. He must have gone inside and simply forgotten to close up the door behind him. It was 10:30 a.m. the next morning when a call to 911 brought the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police out to the 7200 block of Bronze Circle. Jeff Gehrman had been discovered, unresponsive at the side of his house. Upon arriving on the scene, responders found Jeff deceased. It was later determined that he had been stabbed multiple times. The murder had likely occurred the day prior. The first possibility that investigators entertained was that Jeff could have fallen victim to a robbery. As far as it could be determined, however, the house and Jeff's belongings were undisturbed. The bushes and garden growth around the side of the house, however, where Jeff was found, had been disturbed. It appeared that someone had stood in the bushes, perhaps lying in wait for Jeff to return home. If this conclusion was correct, Jeff's murder was a targeted and premeditated attack. The second path of inquiry was therefore introduced very rapidly: that Jeff Gehrman's line of work had gotten him into trouble. Captain Dory Corrin learned from neighbors that Jeff had been a journalist, but not just a writer reporting on the latest local charity drive. Jeff Gehrman was an investigative reporter who had built a very successful career uncovering the secrets and corruption behind some of Sin City's shadiest characters. Investigators promptly sourced surveillance footage from the neighborhood to track any individuals coming to and from the area, as well as to and from Jeff's home in particular, around the time of the murder. And they found what they were seeking. An individual they believed to be the killer was shown wearing a wide straw hat, gloves, and a bright orange long-sleeved shirt. The killer was captured approaching Jeff's home at 11:18 a.m. on the Friday, the day before he was found. The assailant appeared to breach a pedestrian gate. Minutes later, Jeff's garage door opened, and he walked out to the west side of his property. It was deduced that he must have been called over to the side of the house by the killer, who was lurking in the bushes. Investigators found that more of the video showed the suspect calmly walking away from the crime scene. They had the man that was almost certainly the killer on camera, but they did not know who he or she was. A few days after discovering Jeff, police held a news conference and released an image of what they suspected was the suspect's vehicle. Initially, they tracked the vehicle, a 2007 to 2014 red or maroon GMC Yukon Denali with chrome handles, a sunroof, and a luggage rack, driving suspiciously around the neighborhood around the time of the murder. They watched as after 6 minutes following the suspect calmly walking from the scene, the Denali drove to the house. Later, video footage further confirmed that the suspect was driving the same SUV. Captain Dory Corrin called upon the public for assistance identifying the suspect and the vehicle.
As of now, it appears that the suspect was in the area casing to commit other crimes. When at some point in time, our victim comes outside and encounters the suspect, there's an altercation that occurs, and we believe that at that time the suspect stabbed and killed the victim. This next picture you see here, we believe is related to the suspect. We're asking for anyone who has information related to this crime and this vehicle to please contact us as well. It's important to note that there are plenty of other vehicles that will look exactly the same, will be exactly the same, and they obviously are not related. But if anyone sees a vehicle and they believe that it is related and matches this description, we would like all the information possible so we can vet it out further.
Staff at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Jeff Garriman's former colleagues and friends, were devastated by his loss. They were also incensed by the prospect that Jeff could have been targeted due to his work as a journalist. After police made the video of the suspect in the Denali public, Review-Journal reporters spotted a vehicle that matched the given description in a driveway only minutes away from the murder scene. It was parked at the home of a local politician. The county public administrator had a history of disputes with the now-deceased journalist. In fact, when Jeff Garriman's colleagues learned that he had been killed, their suspicions were immediately directed to this one individual, Robert Tellis. The reporters found that a red GMC Yukon Denali happened to be registered to Robert Tellis's wife. Robert Tellis was born in Biloxi, Mississippi, and grew up in El Paso, Texas. The 45-year-old had lived in the Las Vegas area for the last 20 years. He had been married for over a decade and was the father to 3 children. Robert launched his professional career after graduating from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas's Boyd School of Law in 2014. He made his first foray into politics while studying at the school, where he was elected to the position of president of the student body at UNLV. While in this role, Robert was, reportedly, an overbearing micromanager and was not received well by the rest of the student government. His term was cut short after allegations of inappropriate behavior towards a female student led to an internal investigation. Robert was eventually pushed out of his role over his pleas of innocence and an unfair attack against him.
And immediately Rob said, "I didn't do anything like that. You're lying. You're trying to get me. What's going on here?" Immediately went on the offensive.
The rest of the student body found him to be grossly incompetent and not suited for the role. A year after his graduation, Robert had established his own firm, Accolade Law, which specialized in estate planning and probate matters. Not deterred from his political ambitions, he first ran for the position of Clark County Public Administrator in 2018 as a Democrat, and he won. The public administrator's function is to secure the property of people who passed away in the county while a search for family or the descendant's executor is performed. He assumed the office at the start of 2019, and his term was to run until January 2023. Robert Tellis's conduct as the county's public administrator had reportedly led to a hostile work environment. By 2022, the office had been mired in turmoil and internal dissension over 2 years, with allegations of emotional stress, bullying, and favoritism. Multiple complaints to Human Resources went unaddressed, despite reports that Robert was prone to fits of rage inside the office. One employee called him narcissistic and crazy, as well as sinister and calculating. She even reported witnessing other workers visibly begin to shake when Robert Tellis entered the office. They were that uneasy about his unpredictable behavior and his temper.
Episodes of what I would call pure rage. And it would be the smallest little thing that would set him off. And it was totally unfounded and, unprovoked.
The county's response to the multiple reports of bad behavior was that they could not remove an elected official. Only a judge or grand jury could do that. So the staff was left without much support. Robert's conduct was awful enough that some employees, as a last port of call, began to approach a journalist to see if it was worth reporting. That journalist, of course, was Jeff Garriman.
He's an elected official in the county, there's not much they can do. So we decided that we would go public. We would try to talk to a journalist here in our community and see if somebody felt it was worthy of reporting.
I think they expected the county to step up and take heed. That maybe with some public, awareness that might force their hand to take a closer look at what was really happening.
Jeff Gehrman's first investigative story on Robert Tellis was published in May 2022. The story described a confidential retaliation complaint filed with the Clark County Office of Diversity by an estate coordinator who provided details of Robert Tellis's relationship with an office staffer. His favoritism towards this particular staff member had caused excessive and needless tensions in the office. Employees, exasperated by the favoritism and bullying, had gone so far as to secretly videotape Robert one afternoon with his favorite employee in the backseat of her vehicle. It was taped in the corner of a parking lot at a local shopping center. This was one of multiple occasions in which the two spent time together in the back of her vehicle, allegedly for several hours. Jeff Gehrman, publishing the story of the affair and its repercussions at the office, then reported that the county was paying an external consultant to look into the matter. Former county coroner Michael Murphy was to join the office and help ensure that it properly served the public amid the employee unrest. It was not just the staff that bore the brunt of Robert's behavior. He reportedly refused to grant leave for staff to go above and beyond for grieving family members. When Assistant Administrator Rita Reed was told that she could not help a son who had just lost his mother on a Saturday, she was appalled.
He refused to let me come in on a Saturday at no additional cost to the taxpayers to meet this man to turn over his mother's property,
forcing the man to risk his new job by staying in Las Vegas through the following Monday. She recalls Tellis's callous comment from later that day.
"See, I told you he could do it if you just made him." We had the tools to provide it to make a very difficult situation better for him and his family, and we were not allowed to do it.
So Rita Reed had a decision to make. Was she ready to retire? Or was she willing to challenge Robert Tellis in a primary election to oust him from his seat and to take back control of the office? Rita opted for the election challenge. She was assisted in her bid by the shocking investigative reports published by the Review Journal's prize reporter, Jeff Gehrman. As the election date neared, Robert posted a video on YouTube called "The Tragic State I've Found," about what he characterized as the mismanagement of the public administrator's office when he inherited it. The issues were from his predecessor, he claimed. When he came in, he cleaned things up.
Years ago, when I started my first term, I found a disturbing situation at the office. Unfortunately, I found that there were cases that weren't being closed and hadn't been closed for years. I also found that checks to families were waiting to go out so long that the checks went stale before the families could get them. Tragically, there were even situations where the family members died before they could receive their own checks. But I'm very happy to say that we've turned that all around under my leadership. I'd like to ask you for your help now. I'd like to ask you to please be sure to vote for me in this year's election.
Despite his campaign efforts, the main headlines in the election continue to be written by Jeff Gehrman. The journalist's story from June 18th discussed a scathing letter that Robert had posted on his election website. The letter attacked the Review Journal and its reporting and claimed the allegations against him were false. Robert's attacks on the Review Journal, and Jeff in particular, also spread to social media. He wrote Facebook posts that accused the Review Journal and its journalist of conveniently posting their false accusations at opportune times for his opponent.
The article was intentionally gut-wrenching. It was so ugly that you almost had to believe it was true. I can understand why you might have, with the writer's skill at pushing buttons. Also, the timing of the article was very convenient for my opponent. He added, "They are seeking to destroy me, both personally and professionally."
Robert then took to Twitter. He called Jeff a bully, called his reporting BS, and accused the journalist of searching through his trash. Looking forward to smear piece number 4 by Jeff Gehrman. I think he's mad that I haven't crawled into a hole and died. The 45-year-old Democrat lost his re-election bid in the primary after Jeff Gehrman's findings were published. Robert was due to leave office in January. Robert continued to attack Jeff Gehrman and his reporting to anyone who would listen. He claimed to be unfairly targeted due to his position. And this would not be the first time that Robert would play the victim. Body cam footage emerged of a previous encounter between police and Robert Tellis. This incident occurred in 2020 while he was still an elected official. Police responded to his home following a call from his wife and allegations that he had turned violent.
Don't do anything more stupid than you've already done, please.
Oh my god, what the hell am I? This is like totally like, you guys just want to take me down because I'm a public official.
No, we
Who did I
don't.
hit? Take me down because I am a public official. You just want to take me down because I'm a public official. I did not touch anybody. I haven't hurt anybody. I am just being approached, and like, you guys just want to take me down because I'm a public official. I love my wife. You guys want to take me down. That's all it is. Why are you taking me away from my friggin' house? Why do you have any suspicious?
Sit back.
I'm.
Based upon the connection between the red Denali and the politician's vehicle, as well as the overt animosity displayed towards Jeff Gehrman by Robert Tellis in the months before the crime, police obtained a search warrant for his home. In it, they found a pair of sneakers, with stains that appeared to be blood. These matched the shoes viewed in the surveillance footage, worn by the alleged killer. Much of the tread had been cut off, presumably in an attempt to hide evidence. A Ziploc bag full of shredded shoes was then found stuffed under Robert's couch. A straw hat, also like the one worn by the suspect, was found tucked into a toolbox in his garage. A bag matching the one carried by the alleged killer was also located in the house. The red Denali was towed from the house, as well as Robert's other vehicle, a BMW. At this point, he was brought into the station for questioning. Robert was questioned by police, and he voluntarily turned over his clothing to investigators. He also offered a DNA swab. Then, surprisingly, the politician was released and allowed to go home. Authorities stated they did not have sufficient evidence to continue detaining him. There was some debate at that time whether the case was solid enough to formally arrest Robert Tellis for murder, or if he should have been held in custody for a few more hours. As the DNA swabs were being processed, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police opted to release Robert while they awaited the lab results. It did not take long. DNA lifted from under Jeff Gehrman's fingernails proved to be a match to Robert Tellis.
We felt there was not sufficient evidence to continue to detain him, so we allowed for his release, knowing that evidence was literally being developed minute by minute.
Police returned to the house later that afternoon to make the arrest. Except it wasn't quite that easy. When officers arrived to arrest him, Robert refused. He would not come to the door. He locked himself in the bathroom.
The wife is going to upstairs to get the husband the phone so we can communicate with him. Our target is still calm on the phone. However, he has made a couple 405 comments. We're going to go ahead and make the official request for SWAT.
A 405 comment is a reference to suicide. In releasing Robert back to his home, only to attempt to arrest him a few hours later, police seem to have created a precarious situation with an unstable suspect. The street had been cordoned off for hours. By 5:30 p.m., SWAT vehicles, police mobile units, and fire and medical personnel arrived at the scene. A full hour later, SWAT officers entered the home. Paramedics removed Robert Tellis in an ambulance after he was arrested on suspicion of murder. Police said he was suffering from self-inflicted wounds. Authorities described the wounds as superficial cuts on his arms. He may have also swallowed some pills.
With your help, I'm here to announce the arrest of 45-year-old Robert Tellis. He was booked in the Clark County Detention Center last night on the charge of open murder. This is a terrible and jarring homicide, one that has deeply impacted Las Vegas. Every murder is tragic, but the killing of a journalist is particularly troublesome.
Robert's first court appearance sought to establish his bail, should he be granted any. During the hearing, prosecutors linked Jeff's killing to his bombshell reports of Robert Tellis's conduct as an elected official. Chief Deputy District Attorney Richard Scow said Jeff's articles ruined Robert Tellis's political career, and likely also his marriage. These facts established a strong motive. They presented a report outlining the abundance of evidence compiled against Robert Tellis. This included more surveillance footage, which evidently implies or directly shows Robert waiting by the side of Jeff's house, calling out to the journalist when he arrived home, luring him to the side of the house, and then mounting him and stabbing him to death.
Based on the vehicle used, that appears to have driven to the victim's home, from the defendant's home, and then back to the defendant's home. During the time of the murder, the fact that, according to this report, it's alleged that the defendant's cell phone was, activity was terminated immediately prior to the time of the murder, during the murder, and right after the murder.
Justice of the Peace, Elena Lee Graham, ruled that Robert Tellis would be held without bail. Robert's attorneys had advised him not to speak with the media, at least not about the murder case. But Robert was not one to stay out of the limelight entirely. From jail, a local reporter sat down with Robert and asked him if he had any role in the murder of Jeff Gehrman. He was then asked about the body cam footage from 2020 that showed him arguing with police.
I frankly hadn't seen it. I don't know what I was doing. I blacked out. So I was not in control. I don't know medically, scientifically, what exactly was in control, but I was not conscious.
I mean, we're here talking to you.
I understand, and again, like I said, I've made my statement, and I hope you understand. Again, I know that, I've got to take the advice of attorneys and just not speak about the situation.
Robert was easily indicted by a grand jury on one count of murder with a deadly weapon. The state decided not to seek the death penalty.
Robert Tellis, today, the Clark County District Attorney, on behalf of the state of Nevada, has officially filed a criminal complaint charging you with a crime of murder.
The likelihood of conviction is high. One of the factors is the gravity of what he did. There is no more serious crime than murder. And this is what he has done in this case.
Additional hearings were held to formally remove Robert Tellis from his office. Although he had lost the election to Rita Reid, his term did not expire until the following January. This meant that since his arrest in September, Robert had been receiving his regular salary from the county at a rate of $120,000 per year. The judge promptly relieved Robert Tellis of his duties and his salary. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Robert had a difficult time retaining attorneys. After moving through multiple different legal counsel, the lawyer, who had never practiced criminal law, made a request to represent himself.
But again, this is a temporary situation. I intend to represent myself for at least a couple of months while I make sure that I'm in a position to hire another attorney. Because again,
okay, no, we're not playing games. Okay, so Mr. Tellis, we're not playing games.
Okay.
You're not going to represent yourself for a couple months and then hire someone else. If you want to hire someone else, that's fine. I'm going to give you an opportunity to do that.
Well, I want to represent myself, Your Honor.
Judge Michelle Levitt questioned Robert for 45 minutes about his ability to represent himself.
And you understand that once you decide on self-representation, you don't get to change your mind in the middle of the proceedings and request an attorney?
Yes, sir.
So I think I made it pretty clear we're not playing games here.
Right.
And that even if you represent yourself, you're probably not going to get that trial date moved up.
The judge eventually granted Robert's request to represent himself, saying she was not playing any games with him. Robert then filed a motion to have Judge Levitt removed from the case. He claimed her reprimanding him about his lack of background and understanding of criminal law was bias against him. His argument failed. Free from the constraints imposed by external legal counsel, Robert jumped at requests from the media to discuss the case and to proclaim his innocence. What possible defense could he be preparing in the face of the physical evidence, his public motive, and the video surveillance? Well, he must have been framed.
I need to say that I'm innocent and that I was framed. I don't have proof of who did it, but I know who gained or who would have gained from framing me. As far as the vehicle goes, there's a vehicle that looks like mine. As far as any other evidence goes, again, as far as what time it may have been planted, I couldn't say. You know, again, I know it's an incredible story, but that is the story.
Friends of Jeff Gehrman, of which he had many, remained distraught over his death and outraged that his alleged killer's behavior went unchecked for so long. If someone had stepped up, they wouldn't have lost Jeff.
We lost Jeff because nobody listened.
I wish the county would have done the same thing. I wish the county people would have done their job as human resources. I wish the county people who we pay diversity for would have stepped in, because then this predator can have his head cut off like a snake where it belongs.
The mistreated and desperate workers that reached out to Jeff called him their hero. He had the courage to speak out about the conditions at the county office, just as he had over decades of reporting on corruption and misdeeds of the city's most elite and powerful. It was a dangerous task that Jeff Gehrman undertook, but he did it with courage and integrity. The prosecution is expected to take quite a long time in Robert's case, possibly years before a trial formally begins. The court system remains in backlog post-COVID, and the seriousness of addressing the prosecution of an alleged killer will obviously take time. When the time does come, Robert Tellis has said that he plans on taking the stand in his own defense. And that was the tragic murder of Jeff Gehrman and the bizarre case of Robert Tellis.